On Saturday the 6th of August 2022 at 2:15 PM, workers at Massimo's Pizza on High Road in Leytonstone were greeted by a young man covered in blood, hysterically begging for their help. A doula of the restaurant approached the man to see what was happening, and the young man said, "Uncle, help me." Members of the public began to help comfort the man who was bleeding heavily after suffering stab wounds, and performed first aid as the restaurant called the emergency services. Officers attended and gave urgent first aid until the arrival of the London Ambulance Service and the London Air Ambulance, but regrettably, despite the best efforts of the emergency services, the man was pronounced dead at the scene a short time later. A doula of Massimo's Pizza told the Express, "People gathered in the street. He came to the door and said, 'Uncle, help me.' He was very badly stabbed. Nobody was able to find the stab injury. It was really frightening when we saw the bleeding. He was badly bleeding." The young man, who was killed in broad daylight on a busy street just outside the pizzeria, was identified as 18-year-old Ghulam Sadiq, who was from the local area. His family were informed and being supported by specialist officers, with a special post-mortem examination scheduled to take place at Haringey Mortuary. The Metropolitan Police said that at this early stage of the investigation, no arrest had been made, but confirmed detectives had started a murder investigation. Detective Chief Inspector Linda Bradley from the Metropolitan Specialist Crime Command said, "Our heartfelt thoughts are with Ghulam's family as they come to terms with a terrible tragedy which no family should have to endure. He was attacked in broad daylight on the busy high road on a summer Saturday afternoon. I know this will shock and appall the local community, and I want to assure them we will do all we can to identify and bring justice to those responsible. The area is likely to have been busy at the time of the incident. I would appeal to anyone who saw anything at all of note to come forward and speak to us. Did you see the attack itself? Did you see an altercation? Did you see anyone acting unusually or in a way which aroused your suspicions? Might you have dashcam footage from being in the area around that time? We want to hear from you. No piece of information is too insignificant. I would also like to thank the local businesses and residents impacted by the road closures around the crime scene for their patience and cooperation whilst we carry out this vital initial phase of our investigation. We will work as thoroughly and efficiently as we can." Ghulam Sadiq's death comes amid a wave of violence across London after 5 people were stabbed during a 4-day flurry of knife crime over the weekend, including the stabbing of a 15-year-old boy at a park in Islington just 2 days prior. On Monday night, 2 days after Ghulam's murder, family and friends held a candlelit vigil at the spot where Ghulam fell. Tributes were paid to the always smiling teenager who was stabbed to death outside an East London pizza restaurant. A business owner called Ghulam a lovable rogue who regularly hung out on the busy high street. He told The Standard, "Like every other teenage boy, they are always dressed in tracksuits, even in 35°C heat. They put on a facade of being gangster because they think it's cool, but Ghulam was far from a bad boy. He didn't have a horrible attitude. He didn't have arrogance and wasn't one to start fights. I would drive past in my work van and he'd be cycling past, always waving, always smiling. He had a beautiful, mesmerising smile and braces which made him look adorable. He was a kind and gentle person. Respectful. If I was ever outside my store and he saw me, he would stop by and ask after me, my staff and my business. To think that such a young life has been taken is an utter tragedy. I'm just so shocked and heartbroken that such a beautiful soul has lost his life at such a young age." A special post-mortem examination held on the same day gave Ghulam's provisional cause of death as sharp force trauma to the back. On Tuesday the 9th of August, 3 days after the murder, a 17-year-old male who used to live in East London was arrested in Walsall in the West Midlands on suspicion of murder and was held in custody as officers continued their inquiries. The boy, who cannot be named for legal reasons due to his age, was also charged with possessing an offensive weapon in a public place and is due to appear in custody at Willesden Magistrates Court. Detective Chief Inspector Linda Bradley from the Metropolitan Police's Specialist Crime Command said, "This arrest shows that our investigation is making progress, but I am still keen to hear from anyone who is in the High Road area of Leytonstone at around 2:15 p.m. on Saturday afternoon and who saw anything that could assist us to get in contact." Ghulam's family have been devastated by this terrible tragedy, and the thoughts of us all continue to be with them. Ghulam was attacked in broad daylight on a busy street. The area would have been busy at the time of the incident. I would reiterate my appeal to anyone who saw anything, who took images or videos of the incident, or road users who may have dashcam footage from being in the area to get in touch. No piece of information is too insignificant. In the early hours of Thursday, 11th of August, 2 days after his arrest, the young male was charged with murder and with possession of an offensive weapon in a public place, later appearing in custody at Willesden Magistrates Court. The specialist post-mortem examination concluded that Ghulam had suffered a 6-inch deep wound which had pierced his heart, measuring 1.5 inches along the skin, allegedly inflicted with a zombie killer knife. The young male accused of killing Ghulam with a zombie killer knife appeared at the Old Bailey on Monday the 15th of August 2022 and was charged with murder and possessing an offensive weapon in public. The defendant, who cannot be named because of his age, appeared by video link from youth custody and spoke only to confirm his identity. Judge Sarah Monroe, QC, set a plea hearing for October 31st, 2022 and a provisional trial from January 3rd, 2023, with the defendant being remanded back into custody until his hearing takes place. Due to the severity of the case, along with the criminal history of the defendant, the court decided for their anonymity to be revoked. The defendant was identified as Emmett Meyer, now 18 years old, from Solihull Road in the West Midlands. At the time, Emmett, then 17, was out on bail for a separate crime. On March 15, 2021, Emmett had approached a boy outside a school, brandished a hammer and hit the boy with it several times. The victim, who suffered cuts and bruises on his head, reacted by kicking Emmett, breaking his nose in the process. The incident was caught on CCTV and Emmett was convicted at Stratford Youth Court on June 28, 2022 of wounding with intent and possession of an offensive weapon. In regards to the murder, an investigation launched by the Metropolitan Specialist Crime Team revealed that Emmett had taken deliberate steps to evade detection. He had switched off his phone prior to travelling to Leytonstone, and his clothing and knife were reportedly never recovered. The officers were however able to trace his movements and had identified the bike he hired using his own bank card. During his police interview whilst in custody, Emmett made no comment to all questions regarding the incident. Emmett Meyer, who had been held in custody since his arrest, appeared at the Old Bailey for his plea hearing. The court heard how an 18-year-old was chased and stabbed to death in broad daylight by a masked teenage boy who had armed himself with a 22-inch long machete. Ghulam Sadiq was fatally stabbed in the back in an alleged attack by Emmett Meyer, who had set out that day with the weapon concealed in his trousers and had waited for Ghulam outside the family home in Leytonstone. He was wearing a COVID mask with his hood pulled up tightly around his face and had donned surgical gloves before the alleged attack. The prosecution stated that Emmett, who used to live in East London but now lives in Solihull in the West Midlands, had travelled back to London 2 days before the stabbing. Miss Hay said that he had hired a Santander hire bike on the day of the attack and used it to travel to Leytonstone, where he saw Ghulam Sadiq, who was also out and about on his bike. Emmett Meyer, now 18, does not dispute being responsible for Ghulam's death and has admitted he is guilty, but of the lesser crime of manslaughter and denies murder, arguing his responsibility for the stabbing was diminished by mental disorders. After hearing the argument, the judge decided that enough evidence had been submitted and confirmed that a date for the trial would go ahead. On Tuesday the 4th of April 2023, Emmett Meyer, 18, of Solihull Road, West Midlands, appeared at the Old Bailey, having earlier pleaded guilty to possessing an offensive weapon. The 18-year-old was accused of ambushing and fatally stabbing Ghulam Sadiq near his home in Leytonstone, East London. The court heard how Emmett, who was only 17 at the time of the murder, had tried to use false identification to buy knives from websites. On the 23rd of July last year, Emmett attempted to buy a 15-inch Rambo-style knife from a website using false details, but the vendor realised the identity document was false and the order was rejected. Undeterred, the following day he placed an order with another website for 2 knives advertised as a Fantasy Spartan Sword Blackout Version Serrated Blade 2-piece set. This time the order was accepted and the knives were shipped to the defendant's address in Solihull. The knives, however, could not be delivered and were left at the local post office for him to collect. Emmett travelled from the West Midlands to London with his mother to visit his grandfather on August 4th, 2022, 2 days before the murder, where he was believed to be in possession of at least one of those knives. On the day of the tragic murder, he took a train to Stratford where he hired a bike and then made his way to Leytonstone, where he was seen cycling around by a number of witnesses. He had switched off his phone prior to travelling to Leytonstone in order to detach himself from the planned attack. However, CCTV released by the Metropolitan Police was able to trace his movements, showing the chilling moment that Emmett, wearing gloves and a surgical mask concealing his face, with his hoodie pulled up, made his way to the street where Ghulam lived and waited for him. It shows him cycling down a residential road on a Santander bike that he had hired on that day using his own bank card, while brazenly holding a huge zombie knife in his right hand. Although there is no record to show that Emmett collected the knives from the post office, the knives that Emmett bought bear a striking resemblance to the knife used to stab Ghulam. He is seen turning down a side street before dropping the bike on the floor and concealing the weapon down his trousers. Ghulam had been sent out by his mother for barbecue supplies, and after a brief encounter with Emmett moments earlier, he arrives on the same street as him, also riding a bike. Seeing Emmett brandish a large knife, he quickly turns around and attempts to cycle away, but Emmett ran towards him and stabbed him in the back, piercing his heart in the process. Whilst Emmett returned the weapon back inside his trousers and cycled away from the scene, an injured Ghulam stumbled into a nearby restaurant in High Road where he collapsed, where members of the public provided first aid before emergency services arrived just after 2:15 p.m. Emergency services tried hard to save Ghulam, but he did not survive, and a short time later, at 2:39 p.m, Ghulam was sadly pronounced dead. Emmett admitted manslaughter, but pleaded not guilty to the murder, arguing his responsibility for the stabbing was diminished by mental disorders. The court heard that Emmett has a number of mental health difficulties, including post-traumatic stress disorder from violent incidents of bullying against him, conduct dissocial disorder, and also has mild autism. Defending, James Wood KC said Emmett was visiting his grandfather ahead of his sentencing for the earlier attack on a 16-year-old boy with a hammer that occurred on the 21st of March 2021, and that the long wait for the case proceedings was a stressing factor. However, the jury at the Old Bailey found Emmett Meyer unanimously guilty of murdering Ghulam Sadiq by his home in Leytonstone, East London. Following the verdict, Judge Christine Lang, KC, thanks the jurors who had to watch the distressing footage of Ghulam Sadiq's death during the trial. She also highlighted the shocking availability of dangerous weapons online, urging jurors to write to their MPs about the online sales of these types of weapons, such as the 22-inch zombie knife legally purchased in this attack. She told them, "I advise you to write to your MPs. and ask why it is that weapons like the one you saw in this case can be bought from a website legitimately. These weapons are there for anybody to purchase, and it is beyond me as to why that is. The weapon we are concerned with here has absolutely no place in this society. All I can do is encourage you to write to your MP and say why it at least can be so readily purchased. Knife crime in general is becoming the scourge of our society, but at the moment people can get weapons like that. It's really quite shocking. Ahmed Maya now faces life in prison for the murder of Ghulam Sadiq. Judge Lang also adjourned the case to a date to be fixed, saying she would also sentence Ahmed for the earlier hammer attack on a 16-year-old boy, as Ahmed was remanded back into custody. Detective Chief Inspector Linda Bradley of Scotland Yard said, "This is one of those rare cases where we have never been able to conclusively establish a motive for the crime. Maya tried to claim diminished responsibility, but the careful planning that went into buying weapons and his actions throughout the day of the fatal attack showed this was not some random act of violence, but a planned and deliberate murder, and this meant the jury were able to see through his deceit. The team worked quickly to identify and arrest Maya and to uncover the attempts he had made to purchase the weapons he used in this attack. I cannot help but reflect that large knives and machetes being sold online is open to abuse and lamentably continues to be a risk to the public. Ghulam's family have now seen the man responsible for his death brought to justice, but I know that their anguish and loss will be with them forever, and our thoughts remain with them." Paying tribute to her son, a statement was read on behalf of Ghulam's mother, Khalida Parveen, as she recalled the day she saw her son lying in a pool of blood outside a pizzeria. "Ghulam was brutally murdered during broad daylight hours near our family home. There are no words to describe my loss and pain. That wretched day is unforgettable. I recall it as if it was yesterday. How can I ever overcome the void of losing my little baby? I am here today for justice. We have lost our world. Please don't let him do the same to anyone else. I am haunted by the recurring nightmare of the horror Ghulam suffered. I blame myself for not being able to protect my child from such a cold-blooded individual. Ghulam was very popular, compassionate and great fun. He was always the centre of attention and was very much liked by family, friends, teachers and all that he was acquainted with. He had so much to offer and had a very kind and gentle heart. He was very well known for his cheeky looks, respect for elders, good mannerisms, and was known as a chirpy and polite kid in our local area. The mother of two said that she and her younger son had kept mementos, including his clothes and a handwritten yellow note saying, 'Don't worry, I'll clean my room when I get back.' We cherish every moment we spent with him. We have so many happy memories. Ghulam, your short life enriched the lives of so many people. You'll never be forgotten. Loved forever. My darling son, may you now rest in peace, inshallah." A statement written by the defendant was read in court and said, "I'm sorry for what I have done. I didn't mean for this to happen. I'm not good at writing, so I'll ask my mum to write out what I want to say, but for Ghulam's family, I'm sorry for causing you so much pain." Ahmed's family also wrote in a statement about their devastation over their son's actions. Judge Christine Lang, KC, sentenced Ahmed Maya to life in prison with a minimum term of 19 years, reduced to 18 years and 45 days due to 320 days already served in custody. He was also sentenced to 12 months detention for possession of a pointed bladed article, 12 months for GBH with intent, and 6 months for possession of an offensive weapon. He was also handed concurrent sentences for the earlier hammer attack, as well as possession of a hammer and a bladed article. Judge Lang KC said while she was sure the shocking offence was a planned attack, she could not be sure Maya intended to kill Mr. Sadiq. "Although I have no doubt you intended to cause the maximum harm to Ghulam Sadiq, I will give you the benefit of the doubt you didn't intend to kill him," she said. While she took Maya's mental health issues into account, the judge said she was quite satisfied he knew what he was doing. No motive has ever been established for the murder. Due to the judge's plea to ban such dangerous weapons in this case, ministers are consulting on legal changes that would ban the sale, possession, importation, manufacture and supply of the weapons, which can currently be purchased cheaply and legally online. Machetes and zombie-style knives will be banned under government plans to close loopholes, currently leaving police powerless to seize them from criminals' homes. Since so-called zombie knives were banned in 2016, manufacturers have been evading the law by altering the design, meaning that similar large knives with serrated edges continue to be sold as hunting, or in this case, fantasy knives. The Home Office has launched a public consultation on what is described as a targeted ban of certain types of large knives that seem to be designed to look menacing with no practical purpose. Police would also be given more powers to seize and destroy the weapons, whilst criminals would face tougher sentences for their sale and possession, according to a 7-week consultation on the proposals. And that brings to a close the horrific case of Ghulam Sadiq, who was tragically taken away from his loving family at just 18 years old. Lawless Underground would wish to extend its sincere condolences to the loved ones of Ghulam Sadiq. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, then please consider liking the video and subscribing to Lawless Underground for more crime-related content, and hit the notification bell in order to stay up to date with next week's gruesome tale. If you have any suggestions or requests for future videos, then please let me know in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, and goodbye for now from Lawless Underground.